Okay, let's make a start, shall we? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Data is a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. We talk about data like a miracle cure for everything. It's a silver bullet that solves all our problems. But we know data is useful, but how exactly can we get the most out of the data that we have on hand? In this webinar, we hope to shed some light on that. We hope to pierce the veil and provide some clarity on how data is actually used in digital marketing. I will talk about data and its use for three things: decision-making, activation, as well as performance marketing. My name is Darren. I'm a performance marketing analytics lead here in ADA, and my job is to help our clients make the most out of every dollar spent on their marketing. In previous life, I used to be a data science trainer and consultant. So I used to provide corporate trainings in database and programming to some of the largest corporates in Malaysia. With me, I have a friend and colleague, Karyna. So Karyna started her career in Silicon Valley. She used to work in an e-commerce company there, doing some analytics. And she's since come home to Malaysia. And here she drives a lot of the work that we do with her proprietary tool called the Consumer Insights Explorer. Right? A little disclaimer before we start. While we are talking about data today, data is, this is not a deeply technical session. So we won't be going into any kind of programming, we won't be going into any heavy technical elements. This session is designed for a non-technical audience in mind. If you do have an interest in those deeper technical conversations though, please let us know in the feedback form and we can arrange a follow-up session. Karyna and myself would love to kind of conduct those kinds of sessions too. All right, a bit of housekeeping before we start. We've received a ton of questions from participants when they registered, and we're very thankful for that. If you have more questions for us, please raise them in the Q&A box below. So if you just hover over the bottom bar of your Zoom, you'll see a Q&A box. Raise your questions there. We will endeavor to answer them via text if we can, and those that we have time for at the end, we'll address verbally. If you are taking notes and you missed something, don't worry. A full recording of this whole webinar will be shared with you via email at the end of the session. All right. So, what are we covering today? A lot of times when we speak to our clients, they talk about digital transformation, and it's such a monumentous mountain to climb. We don't have enough data. There's no data for us to analyze. How can I do this transformation? Well, what we'd like to talk about today is the fact that most of us, if not all of us, are sitting on a gold mine of data. We have so much data available to us: first party, second party, third party. And we want to talk about what these data sources are, but more importantly, we're going to talk about how we can use them in digital marketing. Now, we talk about data used for three things. The first is decision-making. The second is for activation, which is to say converting your leads into paying customers. And the last use for data we'll talk about is data for performance marketing. Now, throughout these different applications of data, we will be illustrating what our points are with use cases. Now, these use cases are real use cases that ADA has worked on, serving various industries and clients from various markets. So the first one, we'll talk about pharmaceuticals in the Philippines. The second one, quick service restaurants out in Indonesia. The third one is for electronics. Forgive me, that's actually telco carrier in Malaysia. All right. So a little bit about ADA before we get started. ADA is a data and artificial intelligence company. We design and execute integrated digital analytics and marketing solutions. We're headquartered here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, but we operate across 9 markets in South and Southeast Asia. And those are the markets that you see up on screen there. Now, we used to be quite a small family, but we've since grown into quite a large one. We now have over 600 headcount. This is comprised of data scientists, digital media gurus, industry experts, as well as management consultants. You may have seen us on the news recently with our investment from SoftBank. Now, we wouldn't be a data and AI company worth our salt unless we had a significant data footprint of our own. Here in ADA, a lot of the work that we do, the analytical work that we do, is driven by what we call the Exact Data Management Platform. Now, this is a proprietary tool owned by ADA, and it's essentially a collection of consumer profiles. We have almost 400 million consumer profiles across South and Southeast Asia. These profiles are collected and culled from 400,000 smartphone apps, 150 million social media profiles, 800 million video views worth of content. And what it provides us is an online and offline view of our customers and our consumers. And this really helps to drive a lot of the analytics that we do here within ADA. But understandably, not everyone on this call has access to 400 million consumer profiles worth of data. And that's really our point today. We're going to be talking about how everyone has access to data. It may not be 400 million consumer profiles, but it is data that provides you with useful insight that supports your own decisioning, activation, as well as performance marketing. All right, at this point, I'd like to hand over you guys to Karyna to walk us through some of the activation and following slides.
Thanks, Darren, for the introduction. So before we actually dive into the use cases, let's talk a little bit about data, right? Data comes from many different sources and comes in all shapes and forms. So, chances are you're sitting on a ton of data, whether it be first, second, third-party data. And data is typically split into three different types, first, second, and third. And the only difference between these data sources is the source in which they come from. So where does the data come from? And that's all that sets these data types of data apart. So let's jump into first-party data first. So first-party data is information that you collect directly from your audience or customers. Okay, so this data you own and it's yours, right? So this can come in the form of sales data from your brand point of sale system, that's offline sales data. And it can also come from online sales data. So if you sell online, if you have an e-commerce store. Besides sales data, there's also first-party data like apps through your website. And this is where we understand customer journeys, right? And this is not necessarily confined to the online space. It's also, we can also get customer journeys from the offline space. So let's take supermarkets for an example. Okay, so supermarkets are offline stores, right? But they also want to understand the customer journey. So what they do is that they hire field researchers who actually study how customers walk around the store. So what they found out from this field research is that customers tend to walk around supermarkets in a clockwise fashion. So when they enter the store, they go around the supermarket in a clockwise fashion. And this data is, especially important for supermarkets because they can then decide where to strategically place their products in different parts of the supermarket so that they can optimize on the customer journey. So this is an example of offline customer journey data. Now, in the online paradigm, the same thing applies. We talk about e-commerce, we talk about your brand's website. We can also track customer journeys from when they enter the website, what they do on the website, and when they actually bounce off the website. So these are just a few examples of first-party data. This is information that you collect, and this is information that is yours. So let's move on to second-party data. So this is essentially somebody else's first-party data that you can actually purchase and use. Now, I guess not all of us, would have the luxury or would want to purchase first-party data, but thankfully there's actually a lot of free sources online that we can tap into, and a lot of free data sources published by the government, for example. So we have census data. In Malaysia, we have Department of Statistics. So almost every country in the world publishes statistics about their country on a demographic and income level. Besides government published statistics, we also have market reports. So something like COVID reports, which is something that everyone can leverage on right now, because due to COVID, we've been seeing a lot of shifts in consumer behaviors, their purchasing patterns. Now, COVID reports can come from many different sources. One of the sources would be, of course, through the government. So through the government, we can track, when are COVID cases spiking, when are the cases decreasing, so we can understand the flare-up of COVID. But besides the government, we can also look at sources like Google Mobility. So Google Mobility gives us, insight into mobility patterns of consumers in different industries and different brands. So when we're able to stitch COVID reports from Google Mobility and sources like the government, we then can understand, when does COVID flare up and how does the flare up of COVID impact the economic activity? So these are just a few examples of free second-party data that's readily available to you out there. Now let's move on to third-party data. Okay, this one's a little bit more complex, but not to worry, I'll walk you through this. So third-party data is data collected from multiple sources. So it could be a combination of first, second, third, so it's collected all together and packaged into, one data source for brands to easily purchase and use. Some examples of third-party data would be social listening tools like TalkWalker. So what social listening tools does is that it looks at your brand's touch points on all social media platforms. It understands social sentiments and it pulls together all these social sentiments into a single tool for you to analyze and use. Some other examples of third-party data would be DMPs. And let me just double click on DMPs, as some of us may or may not be so familiar with this. So DMPs, they're data management platforms. And basically, essentially what it is a robust collection of data from multiple sources, okay? And these multiple sources could be in the form of first, second, third-party data, both from online and offline touchpoints. So what DMPs do is that it looks at these data points from different sources, it builds relationships, and it packages it into one single platform for brands to easily purchase, do their analysis on, and use. Now, these are just a few use cases of DMPs. Because we look at data points of online and offline behaviors, we're then able to uncover consumer behaviors about people who maybe have gone into our store. Let's say we're Toyota, for example, and we want to understand who has been to our store. We're then able to uncover our customers and understand where do they go online and offline. Now, besides our own customers, because of the robust collection of data, we're also able to uncover our competitors' brands. So we want to look into, as Toyota, maybe we might want to look into customers of Honda. So we're able to do that as well. Now, when we look at offline data that's ingested into DMPs, we can use that for geo-targeting and location targeting. So with all these online and offline data sources, what we can then create is something called audience segments. And I think a lot of the marketers in the audience may have heard of this or would have probably purchased audience segments before, right? There are a lot of other DMPs such as Low2Me, LiveSite, just to name a few. But for those of us in the audience who have not heard of audience segments, basically what they are very granular audiences that you can purchase and use to target on your various marketing platforms. So here at ADA, we have our own proprietary DMP, like what Darren said. It's called Exact, and it's essentially a collection on almost 400 million consumer profiles across Southeast and South Asia. Okay, so we've talked about the different data sources. Now we understand we have, many different data sources from first, second, third-party data. And the next step is, the next question we may be asking ourselves is, how do we use all this data to make decisions, right? But before we even get into decision-making, we need to first understand what are the relationships between all these data points. When we're putting it together, how do we tie the relationships together? So dashboarding is actually a powerful way for us to gain deeper understanding through visualization. And some of the dashboarding tools that a lot of us are familiar with would be dashboarding tools like Tableau, Power BI, just to name a few. But here in ADA, we have our own proprietary tool called Consumer Insights Explorer, CIE. And this is by no means the only tool that you can use. There are a lot of other tools out there, but this is what we use at ADA. And what CIE does is that it ties data from multiple different sources like we talked about. It ties data from DMPs, location data, brand data, and it augments this data with AI capabilities. So on screen here, I've put up a snapshot of CIE, and this happens to be a geographic module of CIE. So we see a map of Malaysia, and we can look at maybe the audience footfall by geographic locations. So where are the audiences in this geographic location? So something we can do on CIE is look for audiences in Malaysia and maybe cross-reference that against certain demographic traits, such as life stages. So what we're trying to do here is create a custom audience, right? So we look at the location, Malaysia, and we look at life stages. Maybe we want to look at college, university students. So we can then, what we can uncover here is maybe certain pockets in Malaysia, a certain part of Kuala Lumpur, we can see a very busy location filled with youngsters and who love fashion, right? And from this insight, let's do something about that, right? So the ability to tie these different data sources together allows us to paint a full picture of our audience. And this is especially very powerful for some of us as marketers to take a peek into the lives of the everyday consumer. Okay, so let's look at a day in the life of Mark. So everyone meet Mark, Mark meet everyone. Okay, so through location data, we can uncover insights like the type of gym that Mark goes to. So we know that Mark tends to go to celebrity fitness. He probably plays basketball or does his gym workouts there every morning. Then through location data, we also know where he works. So he goes to the office after the gym, and his office is located in KL Central. Now, maybe we want to take a look at brand affinity data, right? And what that reveals to us is that Mark is a fast food lover. So he spends his lunches at chain restaurants like Burger King, and after that goes for his coffee run at Starbucks. Then maybe we want to dive a bit into life stage data, right? And his life stage data reveals to us that he's a parent with a kid. So after work, he spends his quality time at home with his family. And last of all, we look at online signals. So we look at app data. So we can tell that Mark is a hardcore gamer. And of course, he doesn't have time throughout the day to play his games. So he mostly games at night when his wife and his kid is asleep. Now, this picture that we can paint, this day in the life picture that we can paint on our customers is gold for marketers because they're always looking for how to send the right product to the right person at the right time. Okay, so let's make this a little bit more real. And let's look at a case done by ADA for one of our pharmaceutical clients out in the Philippines. So what our client wanted to do is they wanted to expand their geographical footprint around the country. So they wanted to launch stores, new outlets. But the problem is they didn't know which regions to start with. They didn't know, what offers should they push when they launch, and they didn't know where exactly or when exactly to launch their outlets. So we used data to uncover all of this. And we started with CIE, right? So CIE reveals geolocation data and geolocation insights. So the first question we wanted to know was, in the entire country, and Philippines is a huge country, which broad region had the highest footfall of customers? So we looked at all the pharmacy outlets in the country. And what we uncovered here is that the central region in the Philippines had the highest traffic footfall in pharmaceutical stores in the entire country. And this piece of information is especially important because now we know that the central region is a hotspot for our client to open up their new outlets. Okay, so now we know that, let's focus on the central region, but that's kind of, painting with a very broad stroke, right? How do we narrow it down? So to narrow it down, we want to look at where are the customers going for our brand and our competitors' brands. So we want to understand who are the major competitors in the central region and what are their footfall trends like. So this is what we see here, a diagram on a chart on the footfall trends broken down by region. So what we uncovered here is one of our specific competitor brand actually had the highest footfall in a certain region. And now we know that this is our biggest competitor, right? So we want to use this to our advantage and maybe place our new outlets near the competitor's stores and draw out customers from our competitor stores and into our stores instead. So now we've uncovered where, right? We know it's the central region of the Philippines. We know that our competitors' outlets that are doing very well on which specific streets. Now, before we launch, we want to understand what products should we offer vouchers for during the launch. So this is where we looked into, besides CIE third-party data, we look into first-party data. So this is sales data. So we looked into our clients' sales data, both from point of sale, offline data for people who go into their stores, as well as the e-commerce data. So where they sell online on marketplaces like Lazada, Shopee, Amazon. And what we found out from sales data is that baby powder and diapers were the top selling products. So what the client did with this information is that they created custom vouchers that highlighted these offerings for the top selling products. So created vouchers for baby powder and diapers. Okay, so now we know to focus on the central region of the Philippines. We know to place our outlets next to our competitor outlets on certain streets. And we know that we want to highlight baby product offerings. So the last step is, when do we perform the expansion? When does the customer launch their new store? So we took another data set here, and this is from second-party data. And this is actually a very interesting data set published by UNHCR. This is free for access for everyone. And this data set shows us the most common birth months around the world. And what we see here is that, what we uncovered here is that in the Philippines, the period of November tends to be the most common birth month around the world. And we're kind of thinking, why November? And my colleague Darren comes up to me and tells me that, hey, did you know that Valentine's Day is in February? So I guess there might be some correlation or causation there. But anyway, this piece of information was crucial for our client, right? Because now they know that baby products would do really well around the month of November or beyond beyond November, like in December, January. So what they did with this information was that they planned to launch their new outlets just before that time to take advantage of the sales cycle. So, through this use case, we're just kind of scratching the surface on how we use a combination of first-party data, sales data, second-party data, free data sets like UNHCR, and third-party data, our exact DMP, to help our clients to use data to make decisions. Now, before we move on, we want to hear from you. So we're going to launch a poll right now. Okay, I think the poll is launched. And what we want to know is, what is your biggest barrier towards achieving digital transformation?
We're quite curious to know because, a lot of people that we talk to, a lot of clients that we speak to, tend to mention these three things as some of their major challenges towards achieving digital transformation. So let's see if, their concerns resonate with what our audience here has. Okay, just about almost halfway. About 150-ish people have answered. Let's just give a couple more seconds. Okay, I think that's about good enough. Let's wrap that up. Okay, it seems like most people say that the lack of strategic direction in data is really the biggest barrier towards achieving digital transformation. And that's interesting. I think sometimes a lack of direction could stem from really not knowing what data can actually do for you in your organization. Today we're talking about 3 applications of data for digital marketing. But I guess, a good way to overcome this is really think about what data actually does for you in your organization and how does it fit cohesively into your overall company strategy. I hope that, the 3 applications we discussed today can give you some ideas how data is used. And you find that, the use of data wouldn't differ dramatically from our use of it in our industry to yours. But if you have specific questions along those lines, please do raise them in the Q&A. We are working hard to answer them as the talk goes on. So yeah. Karyna, do you mind taking us through the next few slides?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Darren, for going through that. Okay, so we talked about data for decisioning. Now let's move on to data for activation. And what activation means is how do we turn our leads into sales or customers? Now, to do this at scale, we leverage on technology, right? But before we can even start converting our leads to customers, we must first understand who are our customers, right? And what are they purchasing? So let's first look into the data set for this. And the data set that we chose here is sales data, because I'm sure that a lot of us here would have sales data. If we own a business and if we are selling, we would have records of this. Now, sales data can come in various forms. It could come in the form of offline point of sale system. It could come from online sources such as the marketplace that you sell on, Google Analytics on your website, and maybe a CRM tool. And the difference between offline and online data is just the level of granularity of data that you get. So let me take offline sales data for an example. Let's look at McDonald's, right? So you walk into McDonald's and you purchase a Happy Meal. Now, the McDonald's point of sale system records down that you've purchased a Happy Meal. So this is at the transaction level. We know what was bought and we know when. But the thing is, we don't know who the customer is, right? And we don't know anything about the customer. We just know what, but we don't know who. Now let's compare that to the online paradigm in marketplaces such as Shopee, Amazon, Lazada. We have access to actually very granular information on our sales data. And this is because, when you purchase something online, you need to log into an account, right? And when you log into this account, what marketplaces can do is extract information about the customer. So we get information on a transaction level, what was bought, on a customer level, who this person is. Maybe we can get information like their date of birth, so we know their age, what they bought and when, even down to the product level. So what kind of products are they buying? What kind of products are doing better than others? Now I just attached a sample sales data set here for some of you to visualize. So we have, transaction data, what was bought. We have customer data, the name of the customer, maybe their date of birth, and product level data, so what was bought. And I kind of want to highlight this, this last column here, this basket price. And this is quite crucial, quite a crucial data point for some of us, because we can then understand what else is the customer buying beyond what is shown on this line item, right? And we can also understand the value of the baskets that they're checking out with, just how much are they spending with us. And this is especially important for us to do some analysis like market basket analysis or determine our customer's lifetime value. So we look at sales data for this, right? So now how do we turn this sales data and use it actionably to upsell and cross-sell to our existing customers? Okay, step one, we looked at the sales data. Okay, and then we found out products that are frequently bought together. So for this, I kind of want to highlight this use case. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this. It's quite popular. It's by Walmart. And what Walmart found out was that when they looked into their sales data, they found that on Friday evenings, beer and diapers were typically purchased together. Now, this is kind of, it sounds kind of weird because some of us may be thinking, are babies drinking beer too? But it's not that bizarre, okay? So the hypothesis that Walmart came up with was that on Friday evenings, at the end of the work week, husbands would, rush to Walmart, get their pack of beer, and while they are doing that, their wives would call them and ask them, hey, can you pick up a pack of diapers for the kids? So that's how, this synergy was born. Now, knowing this piece of information from the sales data, what Walmart did was that they took all the diaper brands and they put it near the beer brands in the beer aisle. And what they saw was a tremendous uplift in sales for both diapers and beers. So this is, an example of cross-selling, right? And, Walmart is all the way in the US. So let's bring this, closer to home for us. So this similar lesson was applied to one of our clients, which is a QSR or fast food client out in Indonesia. And what we wanted to do here is understand what people are buying from their sales data. So are people buying set meals? Are they buying a la carte meals? And what items are frequently purchased together when customers come into the store? So, some product synergies are a bit more common than others, such as if somebody were to buy a burger, you would expect them to buy a pack of fries and maybe a soft drink, right? But where data comes in is it's able to uncover unique product synergies like beer and diapers that we talked about. And for the QSR client's case, coffee and nuggets, right? So this is where data helps us uncover these unique insights. Now that we've created bundles on products that are typically bought together, what we want to apply here is basket building mechanics. And the goal of basket building mechanics is to get customers to spend more with you at a single purchase, right? So this could be in the form of purchase to purchase, could be a buy one get one off voucher, it could be free delivery vouchers, right? And once we've discovered what basket building mechanics we want to apply to our bundles, then we want to find out who should we target, right? So we look back at the sales data and we want to identify customers that have only purchased once and send them targeted messages. So we can send them something like, hey, the next time you buy an apple pie, get a milkshake at 50% off, right? So once we've reached out to our customers, we've sent them vouchers, the last step is to measure performance of these vouchers. Because, we looked at the data, we did some analytics, and we came up with insights. But most of the time, data analytics can only help us make an educated guess, right? But we must always make sure to measure and optimize based on the performance that we track. Now, how does that happen? Some of us may be thinking like, how does all of this happen in reality, right? How do we offer personalized messages to the entire customer base in a single day? And of course, this is not done manually, right? So the question is, how do we scale? So this is where we leverage on technology to offer personalization at scale. And the piece of technology we're looking at today are CDPs, customer data platforms. So here in ADA, we have quite a few, we partner with quite a few CDPs like Miro, Telium, Treasure Data. And what CDPs are, customer data platforms, they're basically the backbone that connects different data sources and MarTech tools together into a central platform, right? So in this central platform, which is the CDP, what it does is that it establishes relationships between these different data points and it creates associations. And this is where it provides a deeper understanding of individual customer profiles. Now, once you've uncovered these individual customer profiles, we can then pick out specific audiences that we want to target and activate them through hyper-targeted and hyper-personalized marketing. Now, for our client's case, our fast food client out in Indonesia, we talked about the different data points and from the different data sources that they had. So they had point of sales data from people who went into their stores and purchased something. They also had website data for people who went onto their website, maybe bought something for delivery, and they also used the CRM tool. So all these different data sources from our fast food client was fed into the CDP, and this is where we perform some analysis. So some of the analysis type included churn analysis, correlation analysis, market basket analysis, which is essentially what we're doing, right? Understanding products which customers tend to buy together. So once we identified which customers would be the most likely to enjoy our offerings, like who will be most likely to respond to the vouchers, we activated these audiences by sending them personalized messages through the CDP. So we can reach these audiences through different marketing mediums, such as EDM, electronic direct mail on HubSpot or MailChimp. We can reach them through mobile, through SMS or push notifications, as well as social media platforms. So engaging with them on our social media platform of choice. Now, I think we've kind of thrown quite a few acronyms around this morning. We started off by talking about CIE, Consumer Insights Explorer, which is our dashboard, and then now we're talking about CDP, Customer Data Platforms. So I think, at this point, before we move forward, let me just recap and clarify the differences between CIE and CDP, if some of us may be a little bit confused. So CIE, Consumer Insights Explorer, is ADA's proprietary AI-powered dashboard, right? And what it offers is pre-built customer insights and foresights that we can explore and extract from. Now, CDP is more of a generic industry term for a customer database, essentially. It's a data platform with customer data, and it aggregates data from multiple different sources for us to perform analysis on and then activate them as audiences on different marketing channels. So let me hand you back to Darren now to take you through the next portion of the webinar. Over to you, Darren.
Thanks, Karyna. Hi again, everyone. So let's talk about the last use of data. And that's last use of data that we're discussing in the webinar. There's tons of uses of data. But the last use that we'll discuss today is data for performance marketing. Now, to be clear, data can be used to drive performance, but performance means different things to different people. Now, for us, we define performance as maximizing the return on ad spend for our marketing campaigns. For every dollar spent, we want to quantify a result, and we want that result to be as much as possible for every single dollar that we spend. Now, this result could take form of reach, impressions, clicks, leads, conversions, you name it. It really depends on the campaign you're running. But in essence, what we're talking about is maximizing your return for every dollar spent. Now, here in ADA, we use a very simple 5-step framework. Now, this is a tried and tested framework that we use for any kind of analytical projects that we have. All right. It's quite an easy to follow guide, and we thought that this would be a nice framework to share with the audience for you to get started on driving performance for your own campaigns in your organizations. So starting from the left, we start by defining the problem statement. We take stock of all the data that we may already have available. Throwing back to the stuff Karyna was talking about, we have first party, second party, and third party data that's easily accessible to all of us. We then analyze that data, right, and try and make sense of it. What does it tell us about our audiences and our customers? But theory and insights is not good enough. We then need to translate them to business action. Now, in the example that Karyna mentioned earlier for fast food, we analyzed the purchase behavior of our customers, and the insight was that certain meals were being purchased for certain drinks. We then rolled out customized vouchers for those customers to activate them for upsell and cross-sell. That's translating the findings into actual business action. And of course, with all things data, we're all about experimentation and testing. Those vouchers may or may not work well. Let's quantify their performance and improve them over time. But this example of this framework gets a bit clearer once we relate it to a real-life use case. And the use case we'll talk about today is the use case of a telco carrier. It's a client that we have here in Malaysia. And what they were doing is they were running an acquisition campaign. They wanted to pull customers away from their competitors to their own brands. How do I pull them away from competitors without wasting money? So that's a kind of critical point here, without wasting money. Because it's expensive to pull people away from competing brands. How can we do this effectively and at scale? So that's our problem statement. Now let's take a look at what data we actually have to kind of address this problem statement. Okay, as a telco carrier, I have all kinds of data. I might have data on my CRM or customer relationship management platform. That data might tell me things like which customers have the highest lifetime value, who spent the most with my carrier, how long have they been with us, how many members of the family are subscribed to our plans. You might have data on your web store. Many carriers have stores for you to purchase packages for your phone. SIM card packages, data packages, call, hours, and minutes. These are all items that can be purchased online. Let's look at that and understand which products are frequently purchased together, which are your hero products, and which products tend to lead to a high abandoned cart. What else can we look at? A lot of us subscribe to market research reports. These are things like Kantar. These are also things like Ipsos. Now, what do those reports tell us? Those reports might give us macro level views. So what's the market perception of my telco carrier? Are we perceived to be fast? Are we perceived to be high quality? And in which regions are we perceived to be good in? So all this gives us robust information about our own customers. And this is data that we already have or would be likely to have as a telco carrier. But remember the use case. Remember the problem statement. How do we pull competitors and customers of competitors rather to our brand? And that's where we leveraged on third-party data, which in our case would be the propensity to churn, as well as the life stages. Now, disclaimer that these traits were obtained from CIE, but again, there are many providers that can provide you with this sort of information and data. It just so happens that, as 88, we use our own tools to arrive at these insights. But let's double click on what this does. What is a propensity to churn and what is the life stage? Here in ADA, we develop AI models all the time. And one model that we lean heavily on for this use case is what we call the propensity to churn. Now, what this model aims to do, it looks at a population of people and it aims to understand who is about to leave their current telco carrier. So in Malaysia, the big four would be Celcom, Maxis, Digi, U-Mobile. Which customers of which brands are about to leave their current carrier? And that's meaningful to us because remember our problem statement. We want to pull customers away from competitor brands. If I can predict when people are about to leave their carriers before they do so, I can be the first one to send them an ad. I can be the first one to intervene and pull them towards our brand. And this was really meaningful to us to use. Now, the second bit that we use here is what we call life stages. On CIE, this is another one of the kind of traits that we have built on AI. So we aim to infer life stages of our audiences based on their online and offline behavior. We divide life stages into two. There's a personal life stage, someone being single, a recently married young couple, parents of young children, and parents of teenagers. We also have professional life stages, college students, first jobbers, working professionals, and retirees. These life stages help us build a picture of who the audience is. It helps us target them with messaging that resonates with their unique needs at their moments of life. And these stages are built on a variety of signals, including where they go, as well as the things that they do and their interests. One example that we like to use here is how do we find out if a person is a parent of a young child? Well, it turns out that if you're a person that's frequently seen near a school in the early mornings and near a school in the afternoons, you're more than likely to be a parent of a child at that school. And of course, depending on the type of school, be it a kindergarten, primary school, or secondary school, you would have an idea about the rough age of these children. Right, so that is one of many signals that go into these AI models. And that really helps us build a complete profile about who the audience is. So, okay, we know the problem statement. We want to pull customers away from competitors. We know the data that we have. First-party data and second-party to understand our own universe, our own customers, and third-party data, such as the one that we see on screen here, helps us understand the competitor customers. Now we need to translate these findings into action. What can we do as a business now to actually pull them across? That's what we did on the following slide. So what we did was we arranged a couple customized audience groups. Now they're arranged on a spectrum. There are those audience groups that we feel you should definitely include in your campaigns for performance. There are those audience groups that we feel, budget permitting, you might want to try them out. They might work. But we've arranged them in this way in hopes to maximize the performance of every dollar spent on campaigns. Now let's zoom in on the example on the left here. Why do we say that that particular group must be included in your campaign? Again, remembering that the problem statement was to pull customers away from competitors. We chose to include these people because this audience group has an 80% likelihood to churn out of their current provider. We know with a high chance that they're about to leave their current provider, and this is thus a moment of intervention for us and our brand. So we're already off to a good start. What else can we layer on top to kind of make a more convincing message and to create hyper-personalized messaging that resonates with the audience? Let's look at a couple of things. By looking at third-party data, we understand which brands or which brand users have a high affinity for other brand users. So if you understand, again, in the example of Malaysia, we have the 4 big telcos. We have Celcom, Maxis, Digi, and Mobile. If I know that many Maxis users tend to churn out, I know that many of them tend to churn out to, for example, Mobile, I may then target Maxis users to pull them across. Understanding relative propensity to churn is also important to us. You may also look at things like what year they purchased their phone in. Now, here in Malaysia, most phones are purchased on 2-year contracts. This is because you want to pay on installment, it's just a lot cheaper. So if you find people who purchased phones 2 years ago, this is a great signal, and it's actually more likely that they're about to be in market for a new carrier and a new phone. So those are all layered on attributes that we use to improve the chances of our campaign succeeding. We then layer on some interest groups. We look at what kind of life stages do these people belong to? And let's obviously choose the largest ones and target them. So we see that, of this high propensity to churn group with all the traits that I've described, there are 2 major life stages that we want to address. The first is college students, and the second are working professionals, office workers. Okay, that's fine. We know their life stages. Let's double click on that and understand what are their interests. It turns out that these college students are more social than the average. They spend tons of time on social media apps and app accessories. Working professionals, on the other hand, are disproportionately more likely to be on call and chat applications. So tying all this together, we have a segment that's hyper-targeted, and we're going to create personalized communications through the creative as well as the key messaging to activate them. So that's our campaign plan. Now that moves on to the last stage of this whole process, which is about experimentation and measurement. Now I've described that there were about 6 segments on the previous slide, and I want to test the first one. So that's our first stage here, which is to ideate, in which case we've done that already, and we're going to run that campaign with that very high likelihood to churn group. What's the next step? The next step for us would be to collect performance data. This is a conversion campaign. We measure how many customers we actually acquired in doing this method. And it turns out that college students perform a lot better than the working professionals. So then that brings us to the third stage, analysis. Why did the college students do better than working professionals? Was it because of budgetary reasons? Was it about the offer that we had that resonated more with the college students? Was it the creative that just worked better? Or was it just coincidence? This analysis is important to us because we want to assign causality. Once you establish causality, we then move on to the fourth stage, which is running future campaigns and then further experimentation. Now, once you know what drives performance, you could use that in the future to scale up your performance and really get the most return for our clients in our campaigns. Just a very simple 5-step framework. And just to recap from the beginning, we defined a prompt statement, which was to pull competitor customers away towards our own brand. We took stock of the data we have. We looked at our own customers with a fine-tuned glass. We also looked at our competitors through third-party data. We analyzed all this and created a targeted marketing campaign. We ran the campaign and we evaluated performance of these segments against one another. Some of these segments worked great, some not so great. We chose the great ones, we found out why they were great, and we doubled down for future performance. This is a tried and tested methodology that we use here in ADA. And we have some numbers to share that use this methodology to bring some great results for us and our clients. This was actually in the previous year's Ramadan here in Malaysia. We worked with a global NGO. And following this 5-step framework, what we ended up with was a campaign that had 33% higher conversion rate, 28% lower cost for every lead generated, and 174% uplift in ROAS, return on ad spend. Again, that is the essence of performance marketing first. One other example that we have is on Thailand. So this was an acquisition campaign from credit card signups. On this particular campaign, what we had was 334% higher approved leads, 53% lower cost per approved lead, and 86% uplift in return on ad spend. So these were some of the results that we had from using this framework and applying this kind of data-driven approach to performance marketing. Now, I'd like to round all this off and tie this up with just one slide. If there's only one slide you remember from this whole presentation, we would hope that this would be it. Data is widely available to all of us. We've talked about examples of data from first, second, and third party. Many of these data sources are free. Many of them you already own, and many of them are really not that difficult to get. This data can be used for many things. We highlighted 3 uses of data. Data for decision-making, data for activating leads, converting your leads into paying customers, and data for driving performance marketing. This is by no means the only use of data. These are just the ones that we've highlighted in the session. Well, I hope this was meaningful and a good use of your time on this evening. Let's now take a quick look at some of the questions that were raised on Q&A. I think we've tried to answer quite a bunch of them via chat, but let's just pull up some of the questions that we haven't answered yet. So we have a question here on what's the difference between a CDP and a DMP. A CDP is a customer data platform. It's basically like a backbone, a piece of tech that connects together all your different data sources and all your different MarTech tools into a single ecosystem. So it's a really useful tool if you want to pull your data, you want to analyze your data, and you want to use that actionably. In our example, we talked about mass personalization for vouchers. A DMP is a data management platform. That's what Exact is. It's just a platform that hosts a large amount of data in a nice organized way for us to use it in our data-driven campaigns. Let's see, what are some of the other questions that were asked? How do we avoid from being biased towards our own campaign hypotheses? This was a really great question. Everyone has inherent bias in them, whether we realize that or not. But for us here in ADA, we practice mindful biases. So we try to understand sources of our own bias, and we try to kind of factor them into many of the hypotheses that we're running to ensure that we get statistically significant results. We work closely with one another to ensure that the biases that we have are in check. We're never able to fully kind of remove biases, but we're able to account for them meaningfully in this manner. Let's see. We have some questions on data privacy. I just want to reassure the audience that we put data privacy at the forefront. Consent is really critical to us, and we continually review our data versus the latest regulations and best practice. Data privacy regulations are evolving rapidly, and we work closely with our legal to ensure strict compliance to the latest in data privacy regulations in all the regions that we work in. Sorry, I'm just trying to make my way through all these questions. For point of sales data, are they willingly shared by partners, or does ADA purchase it? I think there are many arrangements that we have. ADA does have some data sharing arrangements with partners, and in some cases we do purchase transactional data also. It really depends on what your organization needs, and as well as the willingness and ability to share data meaningfully. But have a chat with us to help us understand what are your specific use cases and how we can address those use cases, whether it be through explicit sharing of data or it be through a data partnership of some sort. Will we be sharing the slides from the presentations? Yes, we will. We'll be sharing the slides as well as a video recording of the whole session. So no worries on that front. You'll receive them in an email, and that's the same email that you use to register for this webinar.
I see quite a few questions on CIE, and people want to know, what kind of, if they were to purchase CIE, or if they were to use CIE, what kind of data do they have access to? So I guess it's on a case-by-case basis. So we have a lot of, predefined attributes on brands, on different brands, on different apps that we ingest into CIE. And, there's a whole library of selection. So I think it depends on it comes case by case. So you can decide, what kind of predefined attributes you want in the dashboard. And maybe if you don't have these certain predefined attributes that you want, we can also, always customize to suit your needs. So do drop us a message, and we can consult further with you.
Do you need a DMP if you have a CDP? Well, I think again, these are different products. So a data management platform helps you kind of organize a lot of the data that you have. Whereas CDP is that ecosystem that ties together all your different data as well as your MarTech tools. The use cases that are available to both different systems are a bit different. But have a chat with us so we can understand what your specific use cases are. It may be the case that you only need one or the other or neither. So let's really kind of understand what your specific concerns are. I think we can do one or two more. I think there was a question if we use cookies on Exact. So for Exact, we get data from a range of sources, including internal ones. Exact is therefore, I guess, unique in providing rich data and insights to our clients. We purchase this data from a vast variety of sources, including ad exchanges. And so we kind of have little reliance on cookie data alone. So yeah, I hope that answers that question sufficiently. Okay, I think with that, we'll continue to try and answer as many questions as we can via text. But I think in respect of time, I think we should wrap up. Karyna, do you mind going on the last slide? So, thank you everyone, for taking time to join us this evening. As a kind of thank you gift, we've attached a downloadable resource here if you scan the QR code. What we have on that link is a series of digital transformation blueprints. And these blueprints are useful if you're at different levels of the current data maturity. If you're brand new to this whole game and you'd like to get started, there's a link there for you. If you're a seasoned veteran in digital transformation and you want to know how you can get better, there's also a link there for you. So please have a scan and feel free to download those resources as you see fit. All right. With that, thank you everyone for your time and attention. We will be sharing across all these resources by email. And we hope that you have a good rest of the day.